Welcome to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. This is our weekly venture into the world of small to medium-sized businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives success.
So our goal here is to help you grow and to be the best you can be, both in business and personally. To do that, we identify and we discuss topics that will hopefully help you as you work to build a successful business.
We also interview business owners and executives. It's our hope that you may be able to gain insight on ways to help you be a better leader and provide a better culture for your people.
Our mission here is to help you pull the chute once a week to work on your business instead of always working in your business.
So we hope you find these discussions insightful, helpful, and useful.
And thanks for your support. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. We are so excited that you are here supporting us. Jana, how are things in Nashville this week?
They're good. It's the first day of spring. However, it's in the 40s and it's making me cranky.
Yeah, and to our listeners, we always record these ahead of time, so we can only tell you what it is today. We can't tell you what it's going to be tomorrow. So thanks on that. So we're good here in Chicago. As a matter of fact, since we're talking about that first day of spring, we got 2 inches of snow here in Chicago last night. So that's never fun, but it's supposed to be in the 60s soon. So we're excited about that. And hopefully by the time people listen to this, it's nice warm weather that they're hearing. So, hey, Jana, we have a fun guest today. David Greer is with us today. I'm excited to talk to David. And I'm going to ask David to tell us a little bit about it. I know he's an author and he's an entrepreneur coach, but I'm sure he's done so many other things. David, first of all, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's super to be here.
Right. I'm actually going to brag a little bit. David's actually on his boat over in Vancouver and off the beach. And he's talking to us from there. So that was kind of fun. We've never had that one before. So that's pretty cool to do.
I'm glad I can give you a new experience.
Yeah, we love it. We love it. So David, do us a favor. We always ask our guests to do this because you can do it better than we ever could. Tell our guests a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you're at today. And then we're just going to have a conversation.
Great. So let me start. Like the purpose, why do I come on these podcasts is really, I have a mission, which is to share my experience, strength, and hope in business and in recovery. So I'm a recovering alcoholic and I'm very public about that. And I built businesses while being a practicing alcoholic and, now been building them when I'm sober. So your listeners know like why listen to me on the business side. When I was 22, I was getting my computer science degree and I joined a young software startup as the first employee after the founders. And, I liked the place. I stayed 20 years and built it into a global powerhouse. And, I think for a lot of people, when they hear entrepreneurial stories, they hear that kind of highlight reel, all the best things that happened. But, the truth is building a business is full of challenges. Absolutely. And has highs and lows. And, part of my experience is, and part of the coaching work that I do now, is helping entrepreneurs to make sure that they build their resiliency so that when some of these things come along, they're not so depleted that they can't do it. And I coach around this idea of 3 parts of your life, which is, career, business, finances, life, which is your relationships, your spouse, your family, your friends. And then what I find in high-performing people, and especially entrepreneurs, is that we squeeze out this individual in the middle between those two, called myself. And it takes conscious effort to do that. So you mentioned I'm on my sailboat. Well, that's one of the places I build my resiliency.
Sure.
I get away. I get more connected with nature. I actually was planning to go across this body of water called Georgia Strait yesterday. And one of the very few times in my sailing career where I didn't, because I just didn't feel it was safe enough. I'm solo this week, and I turned back. And I came to a marina in the middle of Vancouver, and some of that's part of recognizing, when I should push and when I shouldn't push. Mm-hmm. And yesterday felt like I was pushing way too hard and was going to put myself and my boat at risk.
So David, as an entrepreneur, then as an entrepreneur, you sort of coach people, or you work with people on this important middle part, which is yourself, and understand
Correct.
yourself first, which then, of course, it helps with your relationship and your spouse and all that. But on the other side, the business side, understanding yourself first helps you then become a stronger leader. Tell us a little bit about that, like how that, what specifically do you tell people? I mean, do you have a process that you put people through? Do you question them first? Do you go in and kind of analyze them? Give us a little bit of how
Yeah,
you do.
so my process, like with a new client, is to get them to write down some goals for 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months in those three areas. Like, give me at least one goal for your business, one goal for your life, and one goal for yourself.
Mhm.
Like in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. They could be related goals, they could be totally separate goals, whatever works for you. And then, on the personal side, what I do is get them to do the strength finders. So that's a book and a self-assessment that you take. So you buy the book, it comes with a coupon. You go answer a whole bunch of questions, try not to think about them too hard. And out of it pops 5 strengths, and strength finders, suggests we have something, I forget the number, it's like 42. Um, and so oftentimes so I start with a set of goals and I start with a set of strengths. Now, which one of those we focus on first has got to be guided by the client.
Yeah.
Right. So I ask them, right? And so, sometimes we never get to reviewing their strengths, but I have that in the background, so I know where they're coming from. Um, and but for most of my clients, we end up in the first 2 or 3 sessions somewhere reviewing their strengths. And most strengths are not that surprising to entrepreneurs who are super high performing people and certain level of self-awareness. Um, where they usually get caught up is when you take the strength to its extreme, it often doesn't work for you. So, for example, I have a number of clients whose number one strength is competitiveness.
Mhm.
If you're building a business, that's not an altogether bad strength to have. But then I ask them, how is it being competitive with your spouse? How is it being competitive with your children? And for most of these individuals, they have been hyper competitive with both of those areas of their life completely unconsciously. Right?
Yeah.
So, and then, it's like like you might be really good on strategy, but like I'm a visionary strategic kind of person. I do a lot of strategic work and I facilitate strategic planning for entrepreneurs and senior leadership teams. But as entrepreneurs, we can get 10, 20, 30 steps ahead.
Mhm.
And the people we're leading, like we don't slow down, like they don't see our thought process. They cannot connect the dots.
Right.
Right? So we're like, and then if you have an activation kind of strength, which I also have, which means like your default is to move into action. So I've already know where we're going. I'm already moving into action. I'm leaving like the whole team, 40 people behind
Yeah.
because I don't take the time to slow down and explain my thought process and then involve them in coming up with a plan for action.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
It's funny. I
So
call that not needing the B and C, right? So if you go A, B,
Yes.
C, D,
A to D.
we can jump to A to D. I do that all the time. You forget the B
yeah,
and C. I don't
yeah.
need the B and C, but a lot of people do need B and C.
Sure.
So these are the kind of things that we start to work on, is start looking at some of these strengths and maybe how they're not working for them, and then look at how it's applying to their current goals. And then, as we dive into their goals, I stay curious as to what's blocking them, what's getting in the way. And for example, I think the single biggest limiting factor on a business is the entrepreneur herself or himself.
Mhm.
We are the biggest thing that's in the way of our own success.
Right.
Right? And we're often not willing to admit that. So admitting that is really difficult. And I certainly was there for a long time. And then, like like say you have a bigger business, you've got a senior leadership team of 4 or 5 people. Um, they're like not going to call you on it generally, like because you're not open to hearing it.
Yeah.
Like, and you're going to turn around and tell them bad things or not listen or whatever. Like it's not worth it. Now, me as a coach who they've hired, there's a little more potential.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
when
sure.
I call them on it, that they'll listen a little bit more.
So do you
And
put them through some kind of a process then, David? Like once you discover these kinds of elements within a business that the entrepreneurs usually, we talk about that all the time, Jeff and I, and a lot of the people we interview say that can be the problem because they're the 30,000-foot
Yep.
thinker.
Yep.
And key for an entrepreneur is to know who to put in the right place with, below that next level. Like you said, your senior leadership team, they have to all be understanding of the processes, and going from A to D is not going to work. You have to have B and C in there in order to build it. So is that a little bit of what you do then as you go back and you try to, again, facilitate like the working portion of the business or the team?
so again, it's client led. So again, the client's trying to get to certain goals,
Mm-hmm.
and then like stuff is showing up that's getting in the way of their goals. So then, and often I'll suggest to them ways they could deal with it and leave the door open to them to choose what they want to do.
I see. Yeah. So
They
you're,
might be ready now or they might not be. Like a lot of times it's like, well, the people who work for me, they don't listen to me. So, well,
yeah.
tell me what you do, and they first of all, they tend to tell them what to do. They tell them how to do something rather than this is the thing we need to accomplish. Use all of your beautiful skills to go achieve that.
Yeah.
And because here's the truth, for most owner founders, which is the kind of people I work with, you've grown your business by the seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
So you figured everything out as you went along. So you have a pretty good idea, you know, from your past experience of how to do every aspect of the business. Now you have to remember when you started, you were a $0 business, and then maybe you became 100,000 a year business, and maybe now you're a million a year business. You're not the same business that you were at 100K.
Yeah.
So like what worked then might or might not work now. And plus you're hiring these really skilled people who may have totally different ideas than you about how to do these things. And you need to let them have space to go do it
Mm-hmm.
and not, but that's a really big gross piece for a lot of entrepreneurs I work with because they kind of turn the wheel of the bus over to these senior leaders and they make all the noise like they're turning it over, and then they see what's happening and it's not the way they're used to, and or it's not the speed they think it should be happening. So man, they grab the wheel back, start steering the bus again.
Yeah.
And then they wonder, like, why are these people not listening to you? Like, well, you're not letting them do their thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're getting in the way of it. And my belief is that leadership is about making the people you lead successful
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the resources and what they need to be successful. And so it's more about coaching. It's about setting clear goals. It's having difficult conversations when things don't happen. Like you do need to keep people accountable, and those are very uncomfortable conversations to have. And even though I've done a lot of work around conflict avoidance and difficult conversations, I still am very challenged sometimes to have them. And I still practice a certain amount of avoidance. So I can relate. And you still need to have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find it's funny you brought this topic up because I think that's one of the biggest hurdles from a coaching standpoint is getting to get the business owner to get out of their own way, right? It's a struggle. And when they tell people they want something done, what I've gotten into with some of my clients is the why and because. Tell them why you want them to do it, because this is the outcome you're looking for. And 95% of the time, all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Versus I don't know why I'm doing this.
Right.
Comment, right? Well, no one tells me why. They just told me to do it. I don't understand why. If we can give them the why and because, it makes them so much better to deal with, and then they understand what the outcome should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in my facilitation work, I use a framework from a guy, Vern Harnish. Has two books, The Rockefeller Habits, and another one called Scaling Up. And he's got famous by something called the one-page strategic plan. And like in the early 2000s, a lot of my entrepreneur friends were using this. And so I eventually went to a training session with him. And, he's not, Vern come up with a bunch of new ideas, but I think his biggest thing here is he took a lot of ideas and combined them into one thing. Now, I will say his plan is a fairly large, like you want to be a double-sided 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper when you print it out, if you're going to be able to read it. But it starts with things like, it starts with Jim Collins, good to great. So it starts with culture. What's your culture Do you define it explicitly? How do you keep your culture alive? So that's part of the actual one-page plan. What's your purpose? So it gets back to your question of why. Like purpose in Jim Collins' context, which is like 30-year purpose. Um, and then one of the things that was totally, blew my mind with Vern was that you start by looking out 3 years. Like, where do you need to be in 3 years to 5 years, somewhere in that range, and get clearer on that. Like, yes, stuff will change, but today, where you're at today, where do you need to be in 3 years? Like, for example, if you think in the next 3 years, your market is going to grow 10% a year, then if you don't grow your revenues at least 10% a year, you're going to lose market share. So if you're not looking at the bigger picture and the macro and where things are going, and or like at the end of my tenure with Robel, which was named for the founders, Robert and Annabelle, the company I joined when I was 22, like we specialized in a particular computer platform from Hewlett Packard, and like we needed to start much more seriously planning. We didn't know when the end of that platform was going to come, but we needed to start building a plan that included it. And then you work back from 3 years to, and by the way, in a 3-year plan, you should have like no more than 5 key like thrusts or capabilities. Like we're going to hire a super, super experienced VP of sales, in year 3, but we're going to build so that we'll be ready for that. Or we're going to move into a new geography. Like, and then your yearly goals, again, I limit it to 5 key goals. Gets down to like, so everybody's clear on where we're going. So they don't ask the why so much because it's like, well, because we said this year we're going to go here. And then on a quarterly basis, again, 5 key, call them rocks. They're things you absolutely, positively must achieve this quarter as a team. And you share this across the whole company. And that brings a lot. So it's reducing. A lot of entrepreneurs try and set like 12 or 15 goals. And the problem is, well, employees have no idea where to focus. Like, where do I start? Right? If you have 5, and if you've made sure the number 1 is the number 1 thing that needs to happen. Right. And, the other 4 may or may not be in a perfect order, but at least this is the number 1 thing that has to happen. Then everybody can start pulling in the same direction. So that's how I solve that problem of the, why and the what is by using this template to provide clarity. And then it's got the cultural piece, the bigger purpose piece. So you're seeing these bigger picture aspects of the company. And there's other things I've kind of skipped over, but now when we built Robel, we did it the classic entrepreneurial fashion, which is, hey, what did we do last year? Okay. How about we do 5% better this year? And, I remember somewhere in the 90s, like we increased revenue by, I don't remember what it was, probably 15, 18%. And we're kind of patting ourselves in the back and how wonderful this is. We were a Canadian software company's principal market was in the US. Pretty well 100% of that growth came from changes in the exchange rate. And we were like fooling ourselves in terms of thinking like we were actually selling more. We were selling roughly the same stuff and the same quantity, but we were getting more Canadian dollars for it.
Got it.
Right? Yeah. But again, like, you need to get better at stepping back from the business. I coach entrepreneurs, rather than always being in the business, step back and work on the business.
So David, let's address the sobriety issue, because I think this is a really interesting aspect that you brought into your coaching and your business. That is, for our listeners, that you also recognize and assist in some of these entrepreneurs if they're having issues with substance abuse or that kind of thing, because you've been sober for 15 years, or did you not say that? Or are you correct?
Yes, I actually in January I turned 16. So
okay, 16. So 16. Yeah, that's great. Congrats. But
thank you.
Tell us a little bit about how you incorporate that within the structure, if you recognize it. And is it easily brought up, or is it easily allowed from some of these entrepreneurs? Just because, that can be a sensitive subject.
It is a sensitive subject, and sometimes it comes up. Sometimes I suspect, and sometimes I found out about it afterwards. Like,
Mhm.
I spent 20 years in denial, like literally 20 years as a daily drinker.
Mhm.
So I totally get self-denial about the problem, right? Um, and I'm just there if they show up as this is a problem. I have some experience, strength, and hope about what's worked for me,
Right.
which is all I have. And for some of my clients, I've had to like make a demarcation, which is like if you want me to be a 12-step sponsor and like really work on that part of your life with you, I can't be your professional coach.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
so you got to be one or the other.
Mhm.
And I'd say everyone has chosen to continue with me as a professional coach, but then I've like pushed them to say, then in this aspect of your life, you need to go find a sponsor. Um,
Mhm.
and I would say, and some of it is, some clients I just keep revisiting it from time to time. They make progress, they get clean and sober for a while, then they go back out. I ask them about it. I ask them how it's working for them. What do they want to do? Again, it's not for me to judge. It's their journey.
Sure.
But just to be there supporting them and know that they'll be welcome back, if they want to put it down. And then for others, it's really more navigating the minefield of being a high-performing entrepreneur and in a social environment where there's a lot of alcohol.
Yes.
So, like, what are the coping mechanisms to help work with that? Um, and like I was working with a client a couple years ago who was in super high-end sales. Like the stuff they were selling needed teams and then senior VPs to approve. And usually, towards the end of the sales process, he would personally have to fly down and have a big dinner. And he did one of these, and he doesn't have a problem with alcohol, but he was sitting there like observing himself and everyone else. And it's like everyone had 2 drinks before dinner, and we had one bottle of wine each. And I said, well, by the definition in the US, that would be
Yeah.
alcohol use disorder. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to judge. Like, it's just that level of drinking all at once, right? By the National Health Association, and similarly in Canada, like that's what it would be.
Mhm. Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's like super common. Um, and so I help with clients to just like at networking events, at those events, like always have a drink,
Mhm.
like
Right.
whether it's Coke, cranberry and soda. At networking events, always have a glass in your hand. So when people offer you a drink, you can say, I'm fine, even if it's just a glass of water.
Mhm.
Because people don't really question, if you have a glass with clear liquid in it, they don't know if it's water or vodka,
Sure. Or
right?
gin.
Or gin.
Yeah.
So it's really about these coping mechanisms out in real life. And if you made alcohol was a part of your culture and then you got sober, it's like, what are you going to decide to do? We
Yeah.
will like talk through that aspect. And for people who are not alcoholics, they might come to me with someone who they suspect has,
Mhm.
a substance abuse issue. And, I like, there's nothing you can really do except hold them accountable to the things they need to do in the business and make sure
Right.
that you hold them accountable and that they have to suffer the consequences of their behavior,
Yep.
Sure.
right?
Yep.
And you can put boundaries, like you can't show up drunk at work. Like, but you got to decide what the consequence is going to be if they choose to do that,
Right.
right? Are you going to let them go? And that can be really hard because it's probably a super high performing individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times when we get these high performing individuals, it's their coping mechanism to kind of stay at the top of the game.
Yeah.
It's a crutch for them, right? And
Yeah, or like for me, it was like rocket fuel,
yeah,
Yeah.
like power up to get more done.
yeah,
And to make the lows not so low and
right.
to make the highs higher, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it made perfect sense to me.
Hey, before we
And
wind down,
I was writing super complicated software, but most of the time I wrote that when I was sober, fortunately.
thank goodness.
Yeah,
Thank goodness.
but but yeah, anyone looking at me from the outside looking in would like never have dreamed that, I
Yeah.
didn't slur, I didn't
Yeah.
stumble, right?
High functioning. Yeah, there's a lot
High
of high
functioning.
functioning.
And
Yeah.
I would say like 80% of alcoholics are, high performing. Like they
Mhm.
have a job, they have
Yeah.
a place to live, they're raising kids,
Sure.
right? And so, we still get stuck in the stereotype of, someone wearing a trench coat with drinking out of a brown paper bag and sitting on a bench. And that's like maybe 1%, if that.
Yeah.
Like they look like you and me and our neighbors and our friends, and
Sure.
one in 10 people have alcohol use disorder in Canada and the US.
Yeah.
Well, you think about that. Like think
Yeah.
about 10 people you know.
Yeah.
Think about being in a crowd of 100. There's probably 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's very prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. David, I want to go back to one thing that you said almost in the very beginning here of when we started talking, just because I think it's a really important point. And that was when you went to go sailing, you decided that it was, you shouldn't be pushing. You were going to sail across the sound and maybe you shouldn't be pushing. And I know a lot of times in business, we have a tendency to push too much. And I thought that was very apropos for you to say, but just because to me, it's like one of the things that's important that I learned middle of my career was, for a long time, things weren't going the way I wanted them. So I pushed.
Mhm.
Right. And then you also said when you push, the results are not what you would hope for. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want our listeners to understand that because I think that's a very important point that you brought up. Because I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we set ourselves up a lot of times, I'll be honest, we set goals that are unreachable.
Right.
And we think we're going to be at a certain place, and when we're not, we can push harder, and we work more hours. And the reality is then that affects the other two parts of it, which is life and myself, right? Which you were talking about. And so that's why I kind of want to tie all this together because I thought that was a very, interesting point. Do you find that the majority of your clients have a tendency to push when they shouldn't, or do you think that that they're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen? I was just curious how
No, none of them wait.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Right. And sometimes, like just in the passage of time, things change
Right.
and things happen, and or you have more data. So sometimes, like it goes against your natural instinct, but actually, the best thing is to be patient and wait.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny,
But also, like I have this internal taskmaster spirit that I've named that like is really, really deeply embedded in me. And I'm a master at getting things done. And I have done a lot in my life. And now, as I've done more self-examination and personal work and recovery work, um, TMS, as I often call them, doesn't serve me well.
Mhm.
So I have to be aware of like when this internal, very important aspect of me, and that is also embedded very deep, is like kind of taken over. Which one of the ways now is, oh, I'm like really, really pushing here. Like,
Mhm.
is this a situation that needs push? Right?
Well, I think that's the question. Is this the situation that he's pushed? Because there are going to be certain situations
Absolutely.
that you need to put.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That we're as an entrepreneur, we're the leader, we're the energy, we're the juice, we make shit happen.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Don't absolutely. But sometimes that's not the right thing to be doing.
Mhm.
Right?
Sometimes you just kind of, as we say, you pull the chute, which is why we named the company that way. You take a
Yeah.
breath, you feel in control, see where you're at, and see where you want to go. And a lot of times when you do that, you're like, yeah, why am I pushing so hard right now? I don't need to be doing that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And or our self-worth or some aspect of ourselves is too attached to the outcome.
No, that's
Like
true.
we do want to make that
yeah.
outcome happen. That's part of our secret sauce and our magic. But it's when we get too attached to achieving that
Yeah.
is when I find we create a lot of personal grief, right?
Great.
By pushing too hard, being a workaholic, excluding other parts of my life, not looking after myself.
Yep.
It's often in that pushing for a certain outcome that I'm convinced is the outcome that has to happen.
Yep.
I need to set the goal. I need to, orient everyone towards that. And then, what I've learned in life is mostly I need to figure out what's the next right thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Agree.
And that's it. Like,
Yeah.
what's the next right thing? Like
Right.
in the next 10 minutes, in the next half an hour, not tomorrow, not Friday, not middle of next week. Like,
Right
what's the
now.
next right now?
Yeah.
What's the next right thing?
Love it.
And the other thing with entrepreneurs is I think they get so wrapped up in the day to day. Like, so if I'm working with a CEO who I've helped facilitate and I've used the strategic planning one-page plan thing, um, I'm like, how many hours a day are you spending on those 5 goals for the quarter and thinking about the strategy for the company? And if it's less than an hour, then I don't think you're doing your role.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and you need to take your best hour of the day,
Yeah.
not your throwaway end of day, totally burnt out hour of the day, but like I'm a morning person, so like the first hour. So I coach them like, don't read emails, don't listen to voicemails, don't like, or come in an hour early before anyone's there. And like that hour is for you to focus on the number one goal for the company.
Right.
Like, and what do you need to set up or help or do or call or talk to make that happen?
Yeah. Love it.
And that that discipline will get your business much farther than the next fire, the next customer complaint,
Right.
the next wrench in the wheels of product management and product release. Like, I'm not saying those aren't important, but that's probably not the best use of, like, just fighting those fires is moving you away from your strategy and your strategic goals.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Hey, David, thank you so much for such great advice. We really, really appreciate it. We have to wind things down here, but boy, I love the insight. Just
Yes.
amazing, amazing. David, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Easiest way, visit my website, coachdjgreer.com. That's Coach D as in David, J as in James, Greer.com. The top left corner of every single web page on my website has my email address and my phone number.
Cool.
And if that doesn't work, there's a contact form too.
All right, there you go.
I love it.
And I do want your listeners to know I have a standing offer for anyone who wants. I offer a free 1-hour coaching call.
Awesome.
So
Great.
if you feel stuck on something and you'd like some help with it, just visit my website and send me an email and let me know, and we'll find a time that works for both of us, and we'll do that.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, David, again, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. For our listeners out there, as always, first of all, go check out David's site and take him up on the free 1-hour coaching call if you need to. Jan and I are always excited to be able to talk to you as well. So continue the emails, continue them coming. We love the feedback. It helps us just make this podcast a little better each and every week. And we're excited for the support that you always give us. Until the next time, folks, stay safe and be healthy.